Midpoint and distance formulas. If you are given 2 points in the xy plane, so say point A and point B. Now every point has 2 coordinates, an x coordinate and a y coordinate. So say, and since there are 2 points, I don't want to just say xy. I want to say the first point has coordinates of x1, y1, and this second point has coordinates of x2, y2. Again, these are just symbols, x1, y1, x2, y2. Then there are several things I can talk about. So when I join them, I get a line segment. And the line segment has a midpoint. Let's call it M. M for midpoint. And you might be interested in knowing how to get the coordinates of the midpoint. So midpoint means these two segments are going to be equal. And the midpoint formula says that the coordinates will just be the average values. So what is the coordinates of the midpoint? I can write x comma y. To find the x value, I have to take the average of x1 plus, or x1 and x2. Average of x1 and x2 is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. To get the y coordinate, we have to take the average of the y values, which is y1 plus y2 divided by 2. In fact, that's what you do when you find the midpoint on a number line. On a number line, you only have a single dimension. There's only one number that each point is specified by. To find the midpoint, you just take the average values. Here, there are two directions, x and y. So you take the averages in both directions. So that's one of the things you can write down. That's the midpoint formula. You just want to remember them as the average of x and average of y. Now the other thing you can talk about is how far apart are they. So let's go ahead and redraw that picture of A and B. This time I'm not going to write the midpoint because that's not what we are trying to find. x1, y1 and x2, y2. And you might be interested in knowing the distance between them. So D for distance. So for that, I'm going to write the distance formula. So what is the distance formula? The distance formula says this: D equals the square root of the difference of x's square plus the difference of y's square. And that's because you can think of D as the hypotenuse of a right triangle. Let's do it in a separate sheet of paper. So you have this distance D between A and B. A is x1, y1 and B is x2, y2. So this distance D can be thought as the hypotenuse of this right triangle. And in this right triangle, the horizontal distance will be x2 minus x1 and the vertical distance will be y2 minus y1. So you can use the Pythagorean theorem. Maybe you want to think D square is equal to x2 minus x1 quantity square plus y2 minus y1 quantity square. So when you are thinking Pythagorean theorem, you're used to seeing a square plus b square equals c square, or you could write c square equals a square plus b square. But your a and b are obtained by taking the difference of the x's and the difference of the y's. That's how you get your a and b. And that is actually d square. To get d, you just have to take the square root. So d would be square root of x2 minus x1 quantity square plus y2 minus y1 quantity square. Just take square root. Now the other thing you could do, which I have not written in the title, but you could also talk about the slope. Slope of a line segment whose endpoints are x1, y1 and x2, y2. And actually you can use this picture. So in this picture, the rise is y2 and the run is the rise is y2 minus y1 and the run is x2 minus x1. So I can write the slope as y2 minus y1, which is the rise, over x2 minus x1. So there are these three things we can find out when the endpoints of a line segment are given. When 2 points in the coordinate plane are given, you can talk about the midpoint, which is given by this formula. You can talk about the distance, which is given by this formula, and you can also talk about the slope. And you can actually use this to write down the equation of the line, but then we can keep on going. So there are these three things I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you.